Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. Welcome to the new year, happy new year. And just like in the start of 2023 and every new year going forward, I want to start off with a good feel good. The way I start the year is the same way I want to end the year, because the end of the year is usually the holiday type of film, which is always like a feel good type of film. But I also want to start with the new year with something nice. Like last year, I started off with Disney's animated movie Aladdin, a great type of feel good movie to start off with the year. But this time around, I want to start off with a very recognizable kind of feel good movie, in my opinion. Let's start off for the new year with like a good note. Is Studio Ghibli's Kiki's Delivery Service. Now, I did watch this as a kid. It showed up on Toonami. Now, I did not. I wouldn't say I didn't appreciate it, but just like I couldn't really, because the anime that I watched as a kid, whereas like Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, things of that sort, always had some bit of like action and some level drama that I just as a young boy can inherently follow. Here, this is kind of like a slice of life come of age story that I didn't appreciate as a kid, but over time, throughout the years, Studio Ghibli has, well, even before even I was born, because this came out in 1989. But Studio Ghibli, as a studio production, was created by, three guys. One of them being who directed this movie specifically, Hayao Miyazaki. And him and two other individuals started the company late in the late 50s, and it just built from there in Tokyo. And over time, they they even got a museum and everything like that. It grew such a reverence and such admiration and respect in terms of a studio company that in like it was like a month ago when like this no, it wasn't a month ago. Where I was, because one of my bucket list places that I always wanted to visit was Tokyo, Japan, and I've written down like a list of places that I really want to visit. It had to be like a must. I have to go see. One of them being the Studio Ghibli area, and then it dawned on me as like, you know what, I haven't like really sat down and actually, because if one Studio Ghibli movie I even remember seeing was Kiki's Delivery Service. I didn't really, give it the respect that it probably deserves as a little kid, because I thought it was boring at that time. So I never really cared to watch any other films. Now that I go older, it's like, oh, and I appreciate subtle nuances beyond like action and things like that. It's like the little touches. And it's like, okay, I want to revisit Kiki's Delivery Service. And after I rewatched it, I was like, oh my God, this is like some layered stuff here. And especially as I'm older, I thoroughly appreciate films that doesn't necessarily need a villain. And it's like, the movie Moana, it's like, I really like that film because it's not really a villain to it. One of my, issues with the first Frozen movie, even though I really liked the first Frozen movie, one of my biggest issues was with that surprise villain, where I don't think he didn't really need to be there, because I think it was serviceable without him. But then again, with the whole flipping the script on how old Disney romances used to be, I guess it's serviceable. But, well, it's serviceable, but you didn't need him to be a villain. you can just say like, oh wow, I don't know anything about you actually. I just kind of like love at first sight. Doesn't always work, but I appreciate you nonetheless, and we can still be friends. That would still serve the narrative without fabricating some kind of villain. Uh, After watching Kiki's delivery service, it's like, man, I really want to check out some other Studio Ghibli stuff, and maybe I'll put it on the list. You know, one other thing on the list for this year, maybe, I'm not sure. It's a lot that I gotta get into. Maybe during the dry runs of months, like, I don't know, August or September, I'll put in another Studio Ghibli thing. Like there's one with like a cat prince or something. I'm not sure. There's a cat with like a top hat or something like that that looked kind of interesting. Of course, I'm familiar with My Neighbor Totoro, and yeah, at least a couple of things that I'm familiar with, but didn't really sit down to see. But I definitely want to check it out. At least there's 20 movies that they did. But anyway, like I said, this movie is pretty much like a coming of age story. Like I said, it's directed by Miyazaki himself, but it stars a young Kristen Dunst as Kiki. I can't believe, I'm pretty sure to this day, I'm pretty sure people still remember her as little Kiki, because I was first introduced to Kristen Dunst in Interview with the Vampire, and after that it was like the first Spider-Man movie. I didn't even realize she voiced Kiki. Got the late Phil Hartman as her black cat Gigi, Tress McNeil as Asano, Janine Garofalo as Ursula, not the Disney Ursula. This not pregnant, I'm sorry. This painter Ursula that befriends Kiki. Yeah, young Matthew Lawrence as Tombo. John Hostetter as Asano's husband, who I thought was just, because he barely have any speaking roles, I just assumed like he was like the helping hand of the bakery that Asano runs. It wasn't until like the literally at the end, as the credits are rolling, that I realized, oh, that's her husband. Like, wow, I was wondering, like, where's the father in all this? It wasn't until the end, it's like, oh, that's the father. It doesn't come across as the father because he doesn't have much speaking roles. He doesn't behave like, oh, clear signs, that's the father. Kath Sushi as Kiki's mom, and Jeff Bennett as Kiki's father. Now, Kiki is a young witch who, man, it's kind of giving me vibes of like Pokemon. Maybe it's just a Japanese thing, because she's 13 years old and she is old enough where, I guess, in this world, young witches go out on their own to go to like a fly to on their broomstick to a different city to essentially like assess with any kind of issues that they might have as in form of their training. And it kind of reminds me of, you know, Pokemon trainers where they're literally like 13 years old and they leave in their hometown to go on their Pokemon journey. And in a way, it's kind of like their coming of age story where they, catch Pokemon and train and raise them, and go to city to city and city, and battle gym leaders and pretty much like, learn about life skills and stuff like that, pretty much. So it's just like very wonderful. It's like, man, this is like it just like immediately hit me like this is essentially Pokemon. It was just without the Pokemon part and just insert witch. And just like Ash in like the first couple of episodes of Pokemon, Kiki's a very kind of like naive young whippersnapper type of child. And of course, the parents want her to wait just at least one more month before she heads out, but she's eager to go. She's really eager to start her witch training. So she's like, I got this kind of attitude. And so they get her all dressed up. Don't know about like, it's just young girls or just like, like, what about if they have young boys? Did it just be young warlocks and they do the exact same thing? It's curious, but not necessarily need to be like explored that thoroughly. But it's just something that came to mind. It's like, what about young warlocks, little young sons of witches? But she creates her own broom, but her mom insists that she takes her broom because it's tried and true and tested and get her where it needs to go. Essentially, it's kind of like, giving your child their first, like your old car that is reliable and can get your kid, who's, getting their first car. It's like, oh, I'll give my kid, my car. Try, true, test it, and it can get them where they need to be, rather than wasting on like a unfamiliar vehicle that hasn't been tested yet, and you don't know the ins and outs of it, and it might break down or cause trouble. Don't want that. So that's how I attribute it, like one-to-one comparison. So Kiki reluctantly accepts her mom's broomstick, even though she mentions that she haven't taught Kiki about potions and everything like that. And it's like, wow, you would think that would be like, after learning about flying, that would be like a second, like what you've been doing in the past like 13 years since the kid was born, that you haven't. Because she, Kiki make a note about, I learned about flying immediately. It's kind of like reminds me of like a lot of Native Americans who learn how to ride horses. We was riding before we learned how to walk, and essentially this is how Kiki's like upbringing was. Like, she was flying before she even learned how to walk. And that's how her line of dialogue reminds me of that kind of scenario, just coming of age kind of thing. It's like how young kids learn and grow in certain familial structures. And I would think like, okay, after she learns how to fly, the next step will probably be potions class. Essentially, it's like, why would you not have her properly prepared so she can like handle certain magics, which you don't even see much of beyond the flying, which Miyazaki has, have like a appreciation of flying machines, like aircrafts and stuff like that. So most of his stuff has some kind of like aerial type of thing involved in a lot of his work. Like Ghibli is an Italian word for a particular aircraft. His father either worked on or flew, aircrafts in WW2 or 1. I'm pretty sure it's more than likely. Yeah, it was more likely. I think he said, like, because I was looking it up, WW1. But and speaking of which, Ghibli also is an Italian word, and once the Ghibli company was expanding, they started getting foreigners involved into the company, most of which were Italian people. So that's why you see, like, there's certain movies that have, like, aerial crafts with the Italian flag colors on them. Matter of fact, this port city that Kiki goes to, what is this? Corico, this port city of Corico. The architecture there looks, incredible. It gives me like vibes of, like Italy with the canals and everything like that. So yeah, so there's a lot of flying involved in this. Yeah, well, a lot of his stuff, but yeah, I was thinking, like, man, why didn't you even teach your kid, like, potions already? It seems like you know essentially, any parent will make sure, like, their kids, like, properly prepare for life. In this universe, you think it's kind of like in like the most crucial thing that you get them, like, properly prepared before they turn even 12, let alone 13, when they're almost ready to go. Then again, you can make that same argument with Pokemon, where it's like, you'll think, like, Ash's mom or any parents' kid who's, have like a kid that's going to be going their Pokemon journey, make sure they're properly prepared before they head out, because Ash was super of a novice. As much as Gary was like a complete dick, he was at least, somewhat prepared, even though you argue overly to the point where it's kind of like, what's the point of the journey if you're riding around in your sports car with your cheerleaders? And it's kind of like, okay, you kind of defeat the purpose of the learning experience if you're in like essentially a high-tech RV. Anyway, so Gigi and Kiki head out, and they bump into this other young witch girl who's kind of like a snob, essentially, and she ends up at going to this other city, which looks kind of like Vegas in a way, with the neon lights and whatnot. And I thought that was kind of like gonna, like I said, I haven't seen this since. I've only seen it like once as a young kid and barely remember the ins and outs of the story. So as I'm seeing this, I'm thinking, like, is that gonna, I don't know if they even make a sequel to Kiki's Delivery Service. They probably should, because it's one of the most iconic, Studio Ghibli films, ever. But it's like, man, you're gonna have that circle back around? You never do. It's like, what's that kid's experience? Because she, it's kind of like, is that gonna be her Gary? Because Gary eventually, despite like the dickishness he gives Ash up to the point of the Pokemon League, where he recognizes Ash's skills and experience throughout his journey, and that he's not this twerp that he used to pick on. He's grew into his own man, essentially, and he essentially humbled. He gets humbled by Ash in his battle against him. Essentially, I mean, there's no battle here in the world of Kiki's Delivery Service, but I want to see like the POV, or at least circle back around where Kiki meets up with that same snobby girl, and unlike Kiki, she has like such a bad time. She ends up like going back home with a tail between her legs, because it's like not as easy as she's making it come across. Or the flip side of that, she'd be like the Seto Kaiba kind of thing, where she's the edgelord, and she pretty much like practically ran the doggone town kind of situation. I don't know, I'm just curious about what happened to that girl and her experience. Anyway, she ends up in this port, and she bumps into this young boy who's pretty much like wears a Waldo outfit, Tombo. And Tombo is just immediately smitten. You could like, because like, yeah, and nobody's really like shocked I guess like they're so used to just young little witches arriving in their towns and learning on their witch training. They're just like, oh, this girl flying on a broomstick. Okay, it's just like a normal thing. I'm surprised there's not more girls popping up here and there. But of course, there's only one girl per city, so they can't have two witches per city. Of course, Kiki ain't thinking about this boy. She's hyper focused on her training. She has to where you never really be, they never really was specific, like help. They just say like, oh, this is primary witches training. Okay, what in detail does a young witch have to do once they get to a new city? Like, yeah, you can help, but what, like a superhero kind of help, or like, you know, I guess help in general. It wasn't very specific what they had to do as part of their training. Because are you, you know, where's your books? Like, are you learning new potions? You know, summons. Your typical witch's brew. What are you doing besides helping out? You're doing the exact same thing that you always done. And you don't really necessarily need to go to another city to do what you're already doing. But essentially, is, I guess it's not about that. It's just like, it's just a anime style way of it's kind of like, you know, a young kid, you know, moving to their own space and living on their own essentially. But it's kind of like, okay, you, I don't know, again, their own job essentially, which is Kiki what does, where she helps out this baker who one of her customers left, you know, their baby's pacifier behind. Kiki helped out with you know, delivering it, and all the while worrying about, okay, she needs a place to stay, which I don't know, it's like, why didn't your parents get you prepared for something like this? Because your mom experienced this, you would think like, oh, this is like, you know, at age 5, okay, I gotta teach my kid, like, you're gonna be going to another city, you gotta make sure you're prepared to find a home, or not necessarily a home, but a place to stay while you're on your training. Make sure you make sure you give your kid some money, some kind of startup money, or like, or something like that, because your kid is literally like if your kid doesn't figure it, I guess that's the point, like sink or swim or fight or flight kind of situation. But it's just like, okay, you want your kid to be self-reliant, good, but you know, she was literally sitting on the steps by, or at least by a fountain or something like that, and you know, her cat just literally asking like, what are we gonna do for shelter, you know, blah blah blah. And it's like, and she's just like dumbfounded, she doesn't have an answer to that. It's like, what have y'all been doing for the past 13 years? You know what this is gonna do. I mean, you know what you should have been expecting. You kind of essentially dropped us into this world, and it's like it could have benefited for some kind of flashbacks. Yeah, I'm gone. Okay. I was like, you could have benefited with some flashbacks or some details. It's just like she is woefully unprepared, and like she was, you know, like this close to being homeless. But thanks to Sano giving her some shelter, and then got the idea about, okay, we can essentially, because you can fly, we can make a half bakery, half delivery service, even having like the husband make this like a wooden plaque, you know, with the words Kiki's delivery service, which is very nice. And so now she is like you know, helping with deliveries, essentially, you know, it's like a mail service essentially. But all at the same time, like Tombo who I keep wanting to say tomboy, Tombo, uh, is completely sipping after this girl. Uh, but it's just a cute young crush kind of situation. But Kiki, it's just, you imagine maybe, I was about to say Kiki might be an introvert a bit, because the way she come across kind of reminds me of myself, because like I don't do well with sometimes with meeting new people, because I'm usually kind of like closed in. I'm not like all out there, with like embracing new faces. Like, I don't know you like that, like, bro, like I gotta get to know people before I just start being comfortable even talking with them. It takes me a while, even to this day. I'm always been like that. I got a little better with like being around certain strangers and talking with them, putting my foot forward and engaging, but it's still there. And I just see myself in Kiki in that aspect. But Tombo wants her to get involved, wants to bring her in, meet some, like he wants to get to know her, constantly inviting her to, meet his friends and stuff like that, but Kiki is a little standoffish a bit. But she eventually does warm up to Tombo. But at one point, because her first official delivery, it gets off on a rocky start, which, in a lot of ways, in people's first jobs, you don't know, like, the lay of the land or, the ins and outs yet. Because after maybe like a month or two working at a new job, eventually you learn your groove. Eventually, Kiki is the same way. She eventually learns her groove, but her first day on the job was, awful. It's like, because she also expected to go meet up with Tombo and his friends, because it's kind of like an aviation club type of deal, because they so into like, aircrafts and aviation, things like that. Who has aviation club? It's like, they tried to make them like a nerd, but then again, it's like people have their own little thing they into. It's like there's people who are super into history, and some people are sneakerheads, and some people are gamer heads, and all this and the other. People have their thing, so I can't really give Tombo and his friends grief on that kind of thing. Also, Kiki meets up with this old lady and her, nursemaid, and these two old ladies working, or at least living in this space, and Kiki's helping them out with, doing, also a delivery, but also helping around the spot. But then she realized, oh, she's running late, because she thinks she'll have time, but not realizing this woman's clock is like 10 minutes fast. So she's rushing to finish her delivery, because the old lady has a delivery that she eventually wants to get done, but it ain't gonna be for a while. I don't know. But delivery is towards her granddaughter, who's just a complete snob bitch. I was like, oh my god, my grandma, what she wants. Oh my god, I don't even like her food. Ugh. But then Kiki is flying home, and it's already like pouring rain, and she is like distraught. How, like, wow, it's like I don't know. It's just I'm having a hard time, like, reading into like why she's like, got super depressed. Maybe I need like another rewatch or something like that to really focus on. But it seems like she wasn't even trying to make sure, because she says she wanted to go to this party that Tombo invited her to, but she wasn't that like, okay, I gotta make sure I get there in time. She wasn't like eager to leave the spot in order to make sure she gets there on time, or at least early. But it's just, I don't know. It's like you wasn't even trying to make sure you get there in time. You seems like you're procrastinating for the most part. It's hard for me to read, like, what was her mindset, and then she gets depressed. I don't know, just like, the delivery wasn't smooth because it was raining, because you got caught up. I'm not sure. That part wasn't a little bit clear on. Maybe you guys who watch Kiki's delivery service can leave a comment, let me know what I'm missing on that part. So she ends up getting, falling sick because of the, pouring rain. But also she also made like a different delivery too, to this young kid, from the same no, it's from like a different woman. It was like an aunt that needs a delivery, and one of it is like a toy black cat that honestly looks exactly like Gigi. But on her way there, she gets caught up in some trees, lands into like a bird's nest or crow's nest, and she realized she dropped the toy, and since the flock of crows are attacking her, she can't really get to the thing and and grab it and get to her delivery in time. So she has Gigi like pretending to be like the doll, while just so she can make the delivery on time, and then she can go back, get the toy, and then hurry back and make a switch. So that's what she does. While she's trying to get the toy back, she meets up with Ursula, who is this painter who is also a craftsman, and helps her fix the toy that got messed up by the crows. And so she makes the switch, then heads back to town. Now, after the whole ordeal with the rain and everything like that, she gets nursed back to health, thanks to Asano. Then she starts spending a little bit more time with Tombo, who shows her his little little flying machine. Now, Gigi, in the meantime, meets up with this, white cat, little kitten, a female cat, and decides to hang back for this just to get to know this cat. So you got Tombo and Kiki riding on his little invention where it's got a big propeller on the front, and he's bicycling to start the thing, try to generate lift. Of course, fails miserably, and they end up falling by a hillside. But then they have this little tender moment of his appreciation about like this big. They kind of really set this up heavily with this blimp or dirigible that they're like preparing to showcase, because is this like this brand new aircraft a machine. And of course, maybe it's because the Tombo's friends was really killing her a bit, because he tried to invite her to hang with him and his friends, but she is like not really feeling it, and a little perturbed with the fact that those kids called her a couple of names, nothing crazy drastic, but to a 13-year-old girl is kind of like a big deal. She not accepted, essentially. She's a new kid in a new town, doesn't know that many people, and she getting lambasted by these punk kids who, by the way, one of them was driving a car, and it's like, y'all should be around the same age. Why is one of y'all driving a car? Oh, I'm reading too much into it, like I said. But she ends up walking home, which I imagine is miles, but she managed to get there. But then she started to notice a few things is kind of off. She can't speak to Gigi no more. Gigi's only speaking just like a normal cat. And then she's also realizing she can't fly. She can get lift, but she ends up plummeting again. So she can't fly. She's losing her powers, and she's freaking the heck out. Okay, like what the heck is going on? And so she gets super depressed. She can't understand her cat. She can't fly, which is like her, biggest part of her. It's like her, like what made her her. So the delivery service is temporarily suspended until she figured this out. So she wallowing some deep depression over this. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure why, because didn't her parents tell her as soon as she lands in the spot, you're supposed to send a letter or contact them? Well, they do have phones. Contact them. She's safe and whatnot. It hasn't done that until like the very end of the film, and it's like just now contacting your parents. You've been there for like what, a couple of weeks, maybe. But Ursula shows up to visit because she has a little cabin in the woods, and she invites Kiki to visit her at her spot for a little while. So they drove by bus and then hitchhike, given the how the length of the trip it takes for Ursula to visit Kiki. It's crazy. So Kiki spends I don't know, a day or two with Ursula, and she breaks down to Ursula like what's been going on with her, and Ursula brings up the fact that, oh, I understand perfectly what you're going through. You essentially has like a witch's block. It's just the same thing what happens to her as an artist. It's like, I have artist block, or if you're a writer, you have writer's block. There's things that, like, if she breaks it down, it's like you're essentially treating this. As soon as you got here, you started your delivery service, so your flying was just fun to you. Now you're treating it like a job, which a lot of people can't understand. When you do something that you love, at first it's fun to you, but then you're clocking it and you're treating it like just like a regular smuggler job, and all the fun essentially got sucked out of it. So you essentially, lost the spirit of what made this such a pivotal point for you. And so you gotta step away. Eventually it will come back. It's like the same with like writers. It's like, writing comes like second nature to you, but then you get a block. You gotta take a pause for the cause for a while. Eventually the creative juices will start flowing again, and just like in like a rapid fashion. So essentially that's what Kiki, once realized, okay, this gotta do it, gotta get a break from this. So she ends up going back to the Kuriko. She helps out the madam around her spot. Then they notice on the news that the dirigible is having like a malfunction where it's not properly lifting the way it needs to, and it's going out of control, and everybody desperately trying to grab on the ropes, keep it like tied down, but it's impossible. And now Tomboy, who was there tried to help out, is stuck on the rope instead of just letting go before it got too high. I'm sorry, it was kind of an ignorant thing, but now he has no choice but to hold on. Now I can't help but think about that very old catastrophe video, one of the biggest catastrophes in human history, where like a blimp crashed and a lot, thousands of people died on this aircraft thing because it went up in like this big boom, and you hear the old audio of this guy like, "Oh, the humanity!" That's where we get, every time somebody says something like that, that's where they get it from that old black and white audio of that big blimp crash. I'm pretty sure it's back in the 20s or 30s or something like that. So that's what I'm immediately thinking, like, oh my God, I'm expecting this big boom or a big blaze of, well, I doubt it's going to be like a catastrophe, but it's like, that's immediately my mind just immediately went towards to like, oh, the humanity. So Kiki races out the door and goes in the middle of town trying to see what she can do, because she got to help her friend, and she sees this man with this sweeping push broom, and so she grabs it, says she will bring it right back, and like, man, that's one of the moment I want to talk about right here now. The audio in this, first I want to take a moment to talk about the audio and the art. First, the audio in this is phenomenal. I love the music, the musical score. The audio is just like, so serene. But two times here where the audio just drops in perfect timing in this last bit of the third act. It happens twice, but the audio just drops and you hear just like a pin drop, and like you just like in awe, just like with like the people in the movie, and you're just like eyes gape. She just like hyper focused, because now her friend's in trouble. She needs to like focus, because like she's the only one that can actually get up there and help her friend. She's the only one that can do this. So she finally flies off a little clunky. It isn't like a perfect takeoff like Superman. It's a little clunky, but she's getting there. So she managed to get her focus again. And so she flies, and it takes a few tries, but she gets to the point where it's by this clock tower, where she gets to Tombo, and she's trying to grab his hand, and his other hand slips on the rope, and he drops. Now luckily there's a crowd of people down below with the trampoline, not trampoline, but those kind of things that firemen have to catch people from buildings and stuff like that. But as he's dropping, Kiki manages, the audio drops again as he's dropping, and she catches him in time, and then this big uproar of the crowd, and the audio picks right back up again. So incredibly done. Oh my God, it was, they did a pitch perfect job with that. Next, I want to talk about the art in here. Now, Studio Ghibli is like renowned for their art, but it's just like, it's just like, the only way I can depict it or describe it is like soft colors. And it's just like, I love this world. It's so immersive, and it's like nice soft colors. And it's almost like, some things like, kind of furry or fluffy, just, all kinds of material that you can describe as soft. It's kind of like how I attribute this world. And like the lighting is just like, oh my God, this is like, I love looking at everything in this. The neon lights of that Vegas looking city, earlier in the film, and just the port during the daylight of this port city of Kuriko is just like so massive, and the architecture is like everything like that. You just like, your eyes are just glued to the screen. So yeah, the art and the sound quality is just incredibly done. So now she got her flying ability back, because now she kind of can focus. And this kind of reminds me of Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, where he kind of have like a superhero, like a block himself. The same way with Kiki in a way, where it's like, I forgot how you described it in No Way Home, but it's just pretty much like, is essentially a blocking him within of himself, like a subconscious kind of thing, where uh, uh, essentially rediscover of what makes him him, and the same thing Kiki has to rediscover herself, because you're treating this like a job, and it's like you forgot the passion behind it. But when it chips her down, she rediscovers all this stuff. My other problem here, aside from the other few things that I mentioned earlier, Gigi doesn't talk again. He's still meowing, and of course Gigi, like, and that little cat have kittens and everything like that, but still doesn't talk again. I don't know, because around this time maybe Phil Hartman passed away, so they could not throw in any final lines that he might have done, or you could have just, I don't know, made got somebody else to fill in the voice at least closely the way Phil Hartman would have sounded like. But I don't know, it's just like, man, it's like, I kind of felt like bad. It's like, oh my god, you can't, since you got her powers back, you'll think like, okay, now the cat, she can speak with the cat again, and the cat doesn't speak again. You're just left to assume that she would have been able to speak with him again. And then she of course, like, Asano has her baby, and Kiki is flying again, and within the clouds with the birds and everything like that. It all ends on a happy note while she's narrating her letter to her parents about how everything went, and how she's fine and everything like that. Kiki probably should have done that as soon as you probably found like a place to stay. You can write or call to your folks, let them know you're okay. Lord knows what they might have been thinking this whole, I don't know how long, I just assume maybe 2 weeks of this, week and a half, maybe up to 2 weeks max. They don't know what happened to you. I don't know, but essentially that is Kiki's Delivery Service. I mean, it's a fun movie, man, and it really made me want, like, I want to check out some other Studio Ghibli films, because I'm like really invested. My Neighbor Totoro, that was the other one I was like struggling to remember the title of. But maybe I'll wait until maybe August or September, when it's like a dry type of time of to go into some other Studio Ghibli film. Maybe one or two more this year at some point. But anyway, I will see you guys in a little bit, because I want to go through a comic book review of X-Men Onslaught event. So stay tuned for that. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of Kiki's Delivery Service, and what was your favorite Studio Ghibli film. But I had to do Kiki's Delivery Service because that's the one like I always remembered out of everything. I mean, because I don't really remember all that much about the other titles aside from maybe a couple of others, but Kiki's Delivery Service is the one that always stood out to me, because with the iconic character. But anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Take care.